Greetings, guests. Welcome to Celebrating Abilities Virtual Family Forum. So before we begin tonight's presentation, we will have a short announcement regarding interpretation services for the Spanish-speaking members of our audience. If you have a need for Spanish interpretation and or closed captioning, click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen for the language in Spanish and closed captioning.
Buenas tardes, regreso. Bienvenidos de vuelta a este evento que estamos teniendo el día de hoy. Sin esta interpretación en español, por favor, va a aparecer en su pantalla un icono que es un mundo. Por favor, seleccione la opción de español. Repito, sin esta interpretación en español, va a aparecer abajo de su pantalla una opción de un globo o de un mundo. Seleccione el idioma español para que pueda escuchar este evento completamente en español. Muchas gracias.
Again, if you need Spanish interpretation and or closed captioning, click the globe icon at the bottom of the screen for the Spanish language. So good evening, MPS families and parents. Welcome to our 5th annual Celebrating Ability Special Education Family Forum. While this is our 5th year presenting Celebrating Ability, it's our first year doing it virtually, and thank you. I am Daryl Hall, and I will serve as your host for the virtual session tonight. We are so grateful that you have joined us. We have come together tonight because we know how important your child's education is to you. Celebrating Ability is about Celebrating Ability is about ensuring that all MPS students get what they need in terms of special education and have the access to resources that they need. Each night, we will have a presentation focused on valuable special educational resources in our district and community. We look forward to you joining us every night to learn about the various organizations and services that they offer to help our children. Again, we are celebrating you all week long with informative topics. So just let me share the topics that from the previous night. On Monday, March 8th, was about platform troubleshooting and assistive technology to support virtual learning. Last night's topic, we reviewed IEP, Individualized Educational Program, means and how it structures education and academic services. So in case you missed it, no need to worry. We have an opportunity for you to review those recordings on our website, and I will tell you that website shortly. So tonight's topic is discuss ways to cope with stress and discover strategies to empower families to create a positive learning environment. Tomorrow, on Thursday, March 11th, get information on Children's Long-Term Support Waiver Program and all its benefits. And Friday, our last day of the Celebrating Abilities Week, March 12th, we celebrate special education services and successes and more. Once again, we thank you for joining us tonight and hope that you will join us every night for the rest of the week to celebrate ability. So before we transition to our presentation, we know that you may have questions as you watch the presentation. Please place those questions in your chat because we will have some time to answer questions after each presentation. Please know that if your question is not answered during the session tonight, we will be compiling those questions from the chat and you will find the answers to your question on the MPS Family Engagement page. The address to that site will be placed in the chat. On that same website, a recording of each session will be available. So sit back, listen, and be ready to engage in our chat feature. So just another quick note, as we move forward to tonight's main presentation, we want you to know that all of the work in Milwaukee Public Schools evolves around our 5 priorities for success. With that in mind, our focus in planning for the Celebrating Abilities event this week was centered around these priorities: increasing academic achievement and accountability, improving district school and culture, and strengthening our communication and collaboration. So we appreciate you and applaud you for all that you do as parents, guardians, and caretakers, in partnership with our district to help our students be successful. And now we will hear a brief message from Dr. Jeremiah Holiday.
Hello, I am Jeremiah Holliday, and I'm excited to be a part of this great event with Milwaukee Public Schools as we celebrate abilities. And on behalf of our superintendent, Dr. Keith P. Posley, I want to welcome you to the 5th annual Celebrating Abilities Family Forum. As a district, we want to ensure that we celebrate the abilities of all of our children and connect families to community resources. Here at MPS, we value the diversity and the strength of our special education community and families, coming together to achieve better outcomes for our students. We want our students to be college, career, and community ready. When it comes to education, the role of the family is of key importance. Let me personally thank you for being true partners in education. I am who I am because of my parents advocating and steering my siblings and I in the right direction. Parents, you have been a strong supporter of your child's learning and education during this virtual setting. With that said, even during our school building closure, MPS continued to keep you involved and your schools and involved, as well as your child education at the forefront during this time of remote learning. We want to hear from you. In the next few weeks, some of you may receive a mailing or email asking for your input around family engagement. Please complete the survey because your voice will help MPS be intentional and focused on your child's need. If you do not receive a survey and you have a child with a disability that attends Milwaukee Public Schools, please call 414-438-3648 and we will make sure you receive one. Remember, students and schools succeed when families are a part of the process. And I encourage you to continue to be true partners in education. Together, we can create a better and stronger future for our children. We appreciate you for being with us today, and please enjoy this week's event. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Holliday, for that inspiring message. So in case you are just joining us, interpretation services can be accessed by clicking on the globe at the bottom of the screen, and also closed captioning. So be sure to add questions for our presenters tonight in the chat room. Finally, be sure to stick around after tonight's presentation for an important message. I'm excited about the presentation that we're about to embark on tonight. And our presenters are Kim Marat and Colleen Way, both from Milwaukee Public Schools, to discuss ways to cope with stress and discover strategies to empower families to create a positive learning environment. Kim and Colleen, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you, Kim, for sharing the screen. I will turn it over to my co-presenter for a moment to introduce herself before I begin the session.
Good evening. Thanks so much for being with us today. As I said, my name is Kim Marath. I am a school psychologist by training, but I currently supervise our team that works on practices like social emotional learning and trauma sensitive schools, things like that. And I will share, I'm also the parent of an 11-year-old daughter. And I'm sure as I'm discussing this, I'll be talking a little bit about my experiences from that lens as well. Thanks, Colleen.
You're welcome. Thank you, Kim. And my name is Colleen Way. I am a teacher in the Violence Prevention Program. As Kim had shared all the wonderful things that we do in MPS, I am also a parent as well, a parent of 3 boys, 14, 11, and 8. So some of what I may share as well this evening may come from that lens as well. So the educator lens and the parent lens. So thank you so much for being here with us this evening. We'd like to begin with our coping with stress with a mindful moment. So our session this evening is on coping with stress. And as one of the strategies that you will hear, mindfulness is incorporated in that. So we would like to begin with a mindful moment. The practice that we will be doing is called STAR. Doing a mindful moment gives us an opportunity just to transition from whatever it was that we were maybe coming from and entering into this space. It's a way to gently and purposefully bring your attention to this moment, this environment. So with that, I invite you to find a mindful position. Typically, feet are flat on the floor. Back is tall and strong like a mountain. Shoulders are relaxed. And then I invite you to either bring your gaze downward or to close your eyes, whichever feels comfortable for you. And our first S is for stop. Taking a moment to pause, allowing your hands to rest gently in your lap or your body to become more still, including adjusting your position so you can be more at ease. And then turning to your mind, allowing the thoughts that might be flowing to begin to slow down. Our second S is for smile, inviting you to gently bring a smile to your face or a small grin, or even just release tension that you feel in your facial. T is for taking a breath. Shift your focus to your breathing, taking a deep breath in and trying to allow the exhale to be longer. A is for allowing and accepting, allowing this space to be inviting, to engage and accept new knowledge and connections and content. And then R is for body movement. So I would like to acknowledge that everyone is comfortable as far as with different body movement. So please do what is comfortable for your body in this moment. With that being said, I invite you to gently roll your neck from the left to the right. And we always want to bring balance to the body, so then rolling our neck from the right to the left. Gently roll your shoulders from the front to the back. And to bring balance from the back to the front. Gently roll your wrists from the left to the right. And to bring balance from the right to the left. You may need to adjust how you are sitting for this next one, as I invite you to gently stretch out your legs. Roll your ankles from the left to the right. And then to bring that sense of balance from the right to the left. And our final R is for release and relax. Tune into your body. Notice any tension you may still have. Relax those areas. When you are ready, allow yourself to come back into this space, this moment. Bring your gaze upward or open your eyes. The practice that we just engaged in is a modification from STAR breathing in our Frog Street curriculum that we use in Milwaukee Public Schools for early childhood. This is a version that was created for staff professional development, and it connects many components of mindfulness. With that, the smile is that idea of cultivating positivity, and when we offer a gentle smile, it can even elevate our mood. The rolling incorporates that physical dimension of our well-being by providing an opportunity for mindful movement and nourishing our body and bringing awareness to the mind-body connection. And then our breath Deep breathing can increase our oxygen in our blood and massage those organs to help signal your nervous system to calm down. So really this mindful moment incorporates much of what there is with regards to mindfulness that you will hear more about as we move forward. For this evening on our agenda, we will explore the following. So we will have an understanding of stress by exploring the definition, what is good stress, bad stress, positive and negative characteristics of stress. We will also use a metaphor to explain the human stress response. We will offer strategies for coping with stress, such as setting boundaries and routines, incorporating check-ins, and what we had just done, mindfulness. We will also talk about setting up for success in the home environment, in virtual learning, and afterwards, such as setting clear expectations, offering choices, and also the importance of relationship building and self-care will be addressed this evening. So what I'd like to encourage you to do is just take a moment to look at this cartoon. Looking at the experiences in the bubbles, and how do they differ between the person and the dog? So the person on the left and the think bubble versus the dog on the right and the think bubble. And as you tune into what you see, you can see how this cartoon beautifully shows the dog enjoying the walk, and the bubble over the dog represents that the dog is focused on what's actually happening in the present moment. They notice the sun and the trees and the person. Versus the bubble over the person suggests a different experience. That person is thinking of the past, the future, worries, plans, to-do lists, bills, a car full of kids, music. So as you can see from these two bubbles, humans can be stressed by both what is happening in the present moment and also what could happen or what did happen versus the dog that is in that present moment. So when we think about what is stress, it can be challenging to precisely define stress, and it is so different for each of us because it's your body's reaction to a certain situation or event. It can be a physical reaction, a mental reaction, or an emotional reaction. And some stress can be good. It can be positive and motivating, where other stress, or sometimes there's too much stress. And this can provoke challenges. We are all unique and have different reactions, so some of us might have a different reaction to the same situation. When we think about the good stress, that is the stress that's important to our survival. Because yes, some stress is good stress. For example, if you're taking a test or playing a sport or giving a presentation at work, such as I'm doing right now, those are the sensations where the heart is beating faster. I can feel the warmth on my face. The muscles are loosening. The breath is getting shallower. The mind might be moving faster as I'm thinking about what to say next. And those are signs of good stress. It's priming me for that performance of this evening, just as we're in this session right now. However, when we think about those characteristics of positive stress, we think about how our stress hormones help the body do what is needed in that moment. So I talked about how it motivated me putting this PD together and presenting this evening. There's that sense of energy. Even though maybe the weather wasn't as bright and sunny, there was still the energy in the room that we're feeling from doing this, that positive stress. Typically, positive stress is short-term stress, and it's perceived as within your coping abilities, meaning that ability to self-manage it. It can also have feelings of excitement. So you might feel like smiling, you might feel the warm heart, you might feel like you have an extra skip in your step. So just those are different ideas of excitement that come in with that positive stress. And positive stress can improve your performance, whether that performance is our cognition, our mind, or whether that performance is within our behaviors and our actions moving forward. On the other hand, though, sometimes there's too much stress, and too much stress can be toxic. Have you ever been so stressed that you forgot what you wanted to say, or you got sick, or you became so worried and angry that you did things that you maybe regretted or didn't mean to do? And that's when the stress moves from good stress to bad stress. When stress gets too high that the body can't optimally function, that it's affecting our mind and body. Those characteristics for negative stress, it can cause concern or anxiety. It can be short-term or long-term when we think about negative stress. It can cause feelings that are unpleasant within our body, such as you have that feeling of a pit in your stomach, or your breathing may quicken. It can decrease your performance, whether that performance be not completing a task, or completing a task of low quality, or just a lack of ability. It can lead to mental or physical problems. And when we think about some mental problems, it could be depression or personality disorders. And when we think of the physical problems, it could impair your digestion. It can weaken your immune system. It can disrupt your sleep. So those are some of the things as far as characteristics of that negative stress. It can also be perceived as outside of your coping ability. So when we think about our self-management, it's outside of what we're able to manage and what we're able to deal with, outside of our coping ability. To better understand the human stress response, we'd like to use the analogy of a car as our metaphor. So a car has an accelerator that releases gas to speed up. Our body is similar. We have adrenaline and cortisol to rev us up and to protect us. A car has brakes to slow down. Similarly, we have brakes in the sense of natural opioids for when we want to rest and restore ourselves. We learn to connect with others. We want to push the brakes to connect with others. When it's time to sleep, we want to push the brakes to sleep. So when the brakes are engaged, we are able to actively manage our emotions and stay connected and be in our thinking brain and think about the choices that we're making. Imagine what would happen if you were in a car and you weren't able to push the accelerator and a brake. So you want to have that same analogy with your body. You want to be able to push that accelerator and brake, not always just drive, knowing that we also need to brake and have the natural rest and the natural opioids so we can restore ourselves. Ideally, when managing ourselves, we accelerate and brake throughout the day to stay emotionally, mentally, and physically balanced. As we find balance between the accelerator and the brakes, we are in what we call homeostasis. We accelerate to manage stress, and then we push the brake pedal to restore and connect. Ideally, we stay balanced by pushing the gas and the brakes throughout the day. So you want to be thinking about times to slow down and bring balance to your day, physically, emotionally, and mentally. Taking those breaks for lunch, checking in with yourself, getting enough sleep. And we're going to talk about a lot of these different strategies further this evening as far as the importance of routines and checking in with yourself and getting sleep, pushing those breaks. As I shared with our definition, each person experiences stress differently and has different coping responses. So for example, a child studying for a test Some of your children studying for a test, well, it might cause them to become verbally agitated or withdraw. For others, studying for that test might result in your child being productive, organized, and engaged and successful with the assignment. It's important to find healthy ways to help your child deal with the responses when they happen. So whatever it might be, when we think about that studying for a test, whatever it might bring, if it's bringing the withdrawing or it's bringing the motivation, supporting them with what they need. Negative coping responses can make stress worse because they can wear you down over time. But positive coping responses can keep you connected, keep you in the present moment, and give you a chance to solve your problems. And we're going to explore some strategies for setting up for success. So I turn it over to Kim. Thank you.
Thanks, Colleen, and thanks for sharing all that important information. So as I said, I'm a parent. I am not a parenting expert. I work in the field of school-based mental health, but I'm also not a mental health expert. So the strategies that will be on your screen in just a moment, these strategies are ones that we know can be helpful to students in classrooms. I know that they're important to use at home. I know they're important for me to use at home, but it doesn't mean I use them all the time. So we're going to talk about what each of these can look like for yourself, but also for your student. And so as we talk through them, I want you to think about maybe what is a strategy or what is something in these areas that you're doing well, and maybe what's one where you're like, that's not going so well, or I could probably use a little bit of restructuring and what that looks like. I know that there are areas of this that as I was going through, I was like, yep, I probably need to do a little bit more with that myself at home. So we want to be mindful, though, that we will never be perfect parents. You can strive for that if you want to, but it's just not going to happen. And so making small changes, thinking about the little things that the little places in the day that maybe aren't going great and you'd like to work on that, or the specific areas that you want to focus on, and look for those little baby steps that we can take that would be impactful for you and be impactful for your child. And it's likely going to be different for everybody. So we'll go through each of these in more detail. Oh, I didn't know they all came in like that. Okay, so the first one is checking in. Checking in on yourself and your child is important throughout the day. When we check in with ourselves, we're basically asking ourselves, how am I doing right now? Is there anything I need to do before I can be ready for whatever comes next? So every day we go through a range of emotions. From the start of the day to the end of the day, you're going to go through a range of emotions. So we ask ourselves several times throughout the day how we're doing, or when we're transitioning between activities. As adults, remembering to check in with ourselves can help us be ready for the next part of our day. It can help us manage frustration during conflicts with our children. The same is true for students. They can check in right before they log on to a meeting or to a call, before they begin independent work. Maybe after they've done a frustrating assignment, they can check in. For our younger students, we might have to ask them and then coach them on how to manage their emotion in that moment. Older students, or those who have practiced, they may have ideas on their own or just need a cue to be able to check in with themselves. The key is to take that pause and check in as often as necessary. So you could consider posting a picture like one of the ones on the slide, or something more simple that could be a cue for your student to remember to check in with themselves, and can serve as a cue for you too. It is important when you're checking in, though, and coaching your child to check in with themselves, to not just do it when you're not doing well, especially if you get in a habit of, if your child is getting really frustrated or they're really angry and you say, oh, you need to check in, that might start serving as a trigger for the student and further escalate them. Whereas if we practice checking in, just before those transitions or just throughout the day. It just becomes a part of the routine. And students eventually will learn to check in on their own and recognize those emotions as they're starting to escalate, maybe before they've escalated. So we want it to become a habit that you stop and pause and check in with yourself. Brain breaks are one set of strategies that can be done, particularly after checking in with yourself and before beginning tasks. So these are quick breaks that help your brain to refocus and stop focusing on one thing and instead focus on something else. So brain breaks actually serve a really important purpose. They actually let your brain process the information you've been receiving, even though you've kind of stepped away from it for a second. It lets your brain maybe kind of catch up and make sense out of what it's been learning. So I don't know if anyone else is like this, but particularly at work, I do some of my best thinking when I get up from my computer and I walk in the hall. I might go get a drink, I might get some water, I might just walk a lap. And just that physical act of leaving my seat and like that momentary thinking about something else allows my brain to process what I've been working on and come up with maybe an obvious solution that just wasn't obvious at that time. I know some people do their best thinking in the shower, maybe when they're driving, running on the treadmill, just laying in bed before bed. And the same is true for kids. So kids can focus on what they're learning, but when they focus for a long time, taking a brain break allows their brain to actually process through some of what they're learning. And it doesn't have to be non-academic, it just needs to look a little different. So it might be a movement activity or a game that could even have some academics built into it. There are a couple of links on the site. GoNoodle, it's not a link, I'm sorry, resources. So GoNoodle is a great resource. You do have to make an account, it's free. But you can make a parent account, and there are tons of brain break type activities that kids can go on and do on their own. I think I've even found a lot of those videos on YouTube, though you probably don't want your kid, exploring YouTube unsupervised, but maybe they do. So there's just a lot on there that is fun regardless of what your kids have been working on. The other is Cosmic Kids Yoga is another good site that has some brain break activities that kids can do on their own. One thing that is important to know too is they say that you can focus for about 1 minute per year of your age, and it peaks at around 15 minutes before you need to change tasks. And it doesn't mean you have to change forever, but you need to kind of reset, refocus, think about something else, let all that information soak in, and then you can kind of go back to what you were working on. So with school and so much of our work in school being done on computers right now, it's more important than ever to really build in these brain breaks. Another set of strategies we can use, particularly after checking in with ourselves, are mindfulness practices. So I'm going to let Colleen talk a little bit about mindfulness next. Oh, you're muted.
Thank you. So mindfulness, as we engaged in the beginning, was that way to transition and a way to feel present and in the moment. It gives us the opportunity to engage and feel how the stressors might be affecting our life. So that way we can be more intentional with our next thought or our next action. In Milwaukee Public Schools, our definition of mindfulness is the purposeful awareness of our thoughts, emotions, physical feelings, and environment in the present moment without judgment. So really, as you might be able to see with the ripple there, the ripple effect is just striving to focus and be in the present. Being in the present and being mindful allows us to be really experiencing what's happening inside of ourselves, what we are thinking, what we are feeling, the emotions, and it allows us to be aware of what's happening around us, where we're better able to kind of soak it in and think about it through our 5 senses. Really, what are we seeing? What are we smelling, tasting, hearing, touching, and really be more in tune. When we develop our mindful habits and use mindfulness, we're better able to respond rather than react to unpleasant or distracting or challenging situations. we understand and have the ability to know that we can reset ourselves. We can come back to a place where we feel grounded and calmer and more focused, to be more thoughtful and better able to connect with ourselves and others. Just like, for example, how Kim had shared about the brain break, how that allows her that opportunity to kind of reset and refocus and think more clearly. So it's just kind of putting that pause in to be able to think more clearly and be more intentional with the next minute. When we think about mindful behavior, we know that stress can cause us to feel overwhelmed. We constantly have different stimulus, different information, different events coming at us. And we have to think about how we respond to those. So for example, when we think about someone bumping into you at the store, or you hear your children arguing, or you received an unexpected bill, or you're running late for an appointment with your child, there's all those different stimulus that are coming in, and thinking about how we respond to that. So taking that first example, someone bumping into you at the store, the autopilot reactive behavior that you see on the left-hand side of this diagram may be to bump them back or say something unkind. That's just what our autopilot might do. If we practice mindfulness and we have that mindful behavior, it allows us that ability to put that pause in so we can really respond to that situation rather than react to a situation. So for example, with someone bumping into you at the store, it might be that you respond to them thoughtfully by asking them, can I assist you? Or I know, were you trying to get my attention? I noticed that you accidentally bumped into me. So it's putting that pause in as a way to productively support one's initial response to that stimulus, so that way it can be more of a positive response rather than a reactive response. Here you will see various resources as families that you have access to within MPS, and it's just broken down where students have access versus family resources. So on the left-hand side, so you are aware, your students have access within Clever to mindfulness videos. This is a platform, Clever is a platform that houses several online resources in MPS, and within there are the Take 5 videos. These videos were done in a collaboration between Children's Hospital and Growing Minds, and they offer a variety of videos for families to engage in. They focus on kindness and compassion, mindful movement, focus and attention, and they're split into 2 different grade bands. So there's K4 through 8th grade, and there's 6th grade through 12th grade. And students can access those and share those with you at home. There's also the Mindful Classroom. The Mindful Classroom is on the public MPS page, or if your child's school has a school counselor, you can also reach out to them as well. Then on the Families Resource page, you will see the definition of mindfulness that we just went over and some of the benefits of mindfulness. You will also find the interactive posters. These interactive posters are things that the family can engage in as well, as far as different mindful practices. So there's a variety of pathways to engage in mindfulness with your children, some of them being where the students can access them through their account, and others being where the families can access them. I encourage you to take time to practice mindfulness with your child. As we shared, a lot of these strategies are best, and I do this with my kids, some of these videos, but it's best when it's modeled. So we want to be thinking as the child's primary caregiver in your very important role in their lives, how can we reinforce and model these strategies? And this can be seen as family time together, engaging in one of these. And as Kim had shared about, it's not always about in the moment that you might see them frustrated. It's also about just making it part of a routine, making mindfulness part of a routine and engaging in some of these practices when students and parents are less stressed, allows us to be able to access them when we are more stressed or in those times of intense stress.
Thanks,
Okay,
Colleen.
excellent. Thank you.
So we're going to talk now about some of those practices we can put in place, or just things we can do to help us navigate stressful situations and maybe set ourselves up for success when those stressful times might be coming. So we all thrive with routine. It helps us make sense of and organize our day. When we have predictable routines, it allows us to just do things without thinking about them and kind of frees up some brain space. So this is things like if you've brushed your teeth without even realizing it, you've started to turn toward home when you were headed somewhere else. Just the other day, oh man, I don't know why it's doing that. Just the other day, I was driving to pick I was driving somewhere I'm not normally. I was supposed to be going to pick my daughter up, but instead I started driving home and then realized this is not where I need to be going. So that's kind of those routines. We just get into those habits. Routine is important for kids because knowing what comes next gives them some sense of control over their day. And in times of crisis or in times of stress, routines are key to individual resilience, to family resilience, to stress management and well-being. Having a set routine can reduce stress by introducing that predictability into the day. And especially when so much of what's happening may seem unpredictable or out of control, that can be a really important thing for people to feel like they have some predictability somewhere in their day and maybe some control over some things that are happening to them. And as a plus, routines can also lead to less arguing with your kids. And that's something that I have experienced, both good and bad. So things like before school and after school routines, homework routines. If there's an established schedule and pattern of what happens before school, after school, it helps transition during those times a little bit easier. Students just know when I come home, this is what I do, or before I get ready for school, I need to do X, Y, or Z, and then I'll be ready to go. And it saves some of the nagging of kids about get your shoes, get your bag, all this stuff, because they just know what's expected during that time. It's the same every day. Sleep we're going to talk about in just a second, but other types of routines can be around things like personal care, like showering and bath time. And I think involving your students in those conversations about what that routine should look like is important in giving them some choice. My ideal routine for my daughter is not what her ideal routine is. We've both had to compromise a little bit, and I'm okay with that as long as she holds up her end of the bargain. Then we can do it her way too. So kind of compromising about what's the best time and when some of those routines should take place. Chores are not something that are part of my routine, and they really should be, because I am one who just tends to spring things on my daughter like, hey, it's time to clean your room. And that leads to a battle. Whereas if it was just kind of understood, here's the time or day or whatever that you're expected to be doing some chores, it probably would go a little smoother. Haven't gotten there yet, but it probably would go a little smoother. One thing that's important to note too is that it's important to start practicing some routines now for any upcoming transitions. And that could include, depending on what happens with the school board decides, it could include transitioning back to school if that's something that you're going to be choosing to do when that option comes. Whenever that may be. So if you are going to have to be setting up those routines to transition back to in-person schooling, starting to establish what some of that looks like before that transition were to occur, so that everyone is prepared and we've practiced and we know what those expectations will be. Sleep is, and I clearly have some transitions on here, so I'm just going to do this. Okay, so sleep is another area where routine is important. School-age children need about 10 hours of sleep per night during the school year. And then it increases earlier, or for younger students, so 11 to 13 hours for kids aged 3 to 5, which sounds amazing. As adults, we need about 8 to 10 hours of sleep. I definitely don't get that, especially when I start binge watching Netflix and then not going to bed when I should, but it's something to aspire to. I'm working on it. So whether it's for you or for your child, there are some tips that can kind of help with that bedtime. So when we need to transition bedtimes, doing so gradually is helpful. And thinking, I always have to think ahead. My daughter's a great sleeper at night, but she tends to then wake up late, which means if she needs to get up early, I have to plan a few days ahead and start transitioning her bedtime earlier and earlier so that she can get up earlier and earlier. If I try to do it all at once, that does not lead to any fun for us. So thinking about that, if there's adjustments to your schedule, transitioning those bedtimes gradually. Limiting naps can be important, but it can be hard. I know when I was a teenager, I was working, and so I got in this habit of going to school, then going to work, and then staying up late to do my homework, and then sleeping every day in study hall when I was supposed to be doing my homework, so that I didn't have to stay up late doing my homework. And so I had to stop that nap during study hall and start doing my homework then in order to break that cycle, but that was really tough to do. But trying to limit that or shorten and start eliminating naps for yourself and your kids can help then with that earlier bedtime and make waking up a little bit easier, feeling refreshed. Removing electronics from bedrooms is, those are distractions from sleep, so that is helpful to do as well. I have my phone in my room. It's the only thing I have for people to, reach out if there's an emergency, but it can be helpful to put a limit on it so you don't get sucked into scrolling, because we know what a time suck that can be. And instead of sleeping, scrolling through your phone is more fun. So, but it hasn't gotten my phone out of my room. And then finally, a calming pre-sleep routine. So that could include things like shower, bath, reading, family time, listening to soothing music, journaling, but it should not include electronics for about 30 minutes before bed. So again, those are all kind of ideal world, but thinking about that routine leading up to bedtime makes that transition to sleep a little bit easier and a little bit more habitual if you have that same pre-bedtime routine. Boundaries are something that is particularly important now when a lot of people are just at home a lot. And so can be, if you're working from home, having boundaries is important. With students doing school from home, some of those physical boundaries are important too. This just creates opportunities to focus on the task, but then also to provide some time to reset. So it might not be possible to have a separate room devoted to work and relaxation. But thinking about just the space that's being used, instead of sitting on the bed doing your schooling and then going to sleep in the same bed, if there can be some physical separation between those spaces, can help create that boundary between workspace and relaxation space. Similarly, having distinct times set aside for this can also help. So, sometimes you might have to get work done in the evenings. Kids have homework to do, but if those times are really set and distinct, that this is homework time and now it is fun time, that can help create that psychological distance between the two spaces, that boundary between work and play. I feel like I've been on my devices a lot more now during this pandemic than I ever had been before. So really trying to be mindful of that screen time and creating a boundary for yourself around how much you're on screens. An important piece of that too for me has been just trying to really focus on family, particularly during meals, and not allowing myself to get sucked into, if I'm on my phone and an email comes through and then I get focused on that. So really trying to be mindful of creating that boundary of when I will look at my work emails and when I will not. Another component that can help kind of reduce those stressful environments is building strong relationships, which I know is easier during some times of child development than during others. I also know with an 11-year-old daughter, I'm entering one of those times where it's more difficult. But so spending time together as a family just helps start to build some of that sense of connection, Focusing on trust between individuals, I think that can be difficult as a parent. We want to ensure that things get done and get done now when I said they need to, but saying, I'm trusting you that this will happen, and focusing on then the young person building that sense of responsibility and trusting that we will allow them to get what needs to be done on their time. Providing encouragement, this looks like just acknowledgement and positive reinforcement, and things like I'm here for you, or I see you've been doing a great job and I appreciate it. But those little just kind of unexpected moments where you can encourage your student, that you recognize that they're doing their very best. Demonstrating mutual respect, this can really be hard because sometimes as parents we think, you know what, you should respect me, I'm an adult, and our young people think, no, you need to show me you're worth being respected. And so that can lead to a conflict. So really demonstrating that mutual respect, that I respect you enough to involve you in this decision, and I need you to respect me enough to hold up your end of the deal when we do come to a decision. Respecting people's opinions, respecting your child's opinion, and also then expecting that they will respect yours. Reconnecting, and in particular, talking about reconnection maybe after a conflict, after that conflict is over and there's some space and you're both kind of calming down, reconnecting and maybe talking about how it went, or maybe some things that you recognize you didn't do so well during that conflict. Some spaces where you're saying, I don't like how that happened. Here's why it had to happen. And but I love you. And, maybe next time we'll kind of get through this better. But so just that reconnection to reestablish and say, like, just because we had this conflict, it doesn't mean that our relationship is broken, and that it won't still be there, but that we'll kind of work through this. We'll learn from this and we'll move on. And then the last important piece of that is just being available when kids want to talk, and demonstrating that you're present and you're willing to listen. They won't always want to talk. There's times they might never want to talk, but knowing and kind of putting yourself out there that I'm here and available to you whenever it does happen. With communication, there are some key pieces to this that again can help to cut down on some of the conflict we might experience when we're trying to maybe get our students to do something that they don't want to do. So being clear about expectations. We don't want to assume that expectations are understood and that we need to kind of spell it out. So demands change from situation to situation, and when students or when kids aren't clear about what they're supposed to be doing, they're more likely to misbehave. And so really being clear with what it is that is expected in a given situation, and doing that before that situation, and then maybe reminding immediately before, so that they're kind of prepared with what it is that they're expected to be doing in whatever that situation is. Along with that, saying what you want a child to do versus what you don't want them to do. In many situations, most of the time, kids know what they're not supposed to be doing. They might still do it, but they know what they're not supposed to be doing. But if we tell them what to do, it helps us to be more clear, and it helps to ensure that they know what it is they're expected to be doing at that time. So for instance, I was once at the mall, and which maybe just stated how long ago this was, because I don't know, definitely wasn't during the pandemic, but I was at the mall and I was in a store that had a lot of breakable things, and there was a parent who was with her child and had said, okay, remember, as they were walking in, so remember, don't touch anything. And they walked in and the kid immediately touched something, and the mom said, now I need you to put your hands in your pockets because I told you not to touch anything and you did, so now you need to keep your hands in your pockets. And then her child did and was able to, because she had something to do with her hands that she knew she was supposed to be doing, not just don't touch things. So I saw that and I was like, ooh, that's a good thing for me to remember. But really, again, emphasizing the what should they be doing, not what they should not be doing. And kids can always find ways around what not to do. Like, I didn't hit my brother, I kicked him. Okay, well, don't do that either. Giving directions face-to-face rather than yelling up the stairs, which is what I do. I'm making myself sound like a terrible parent here. Maybe I am, but so yelling up the stairs, not the best way to ensure that the message is heard, but giving those directions face-to-face increases the likelihood that what you say will be remembered and understood. Giving warnings for transitions. Transitions can be hard for kids, especially if they're in the middle of something that they're enjoying doing. So having a warning, knowing, okay, I have a couple minutes left, gives them the chance to find a good stopping place. I know that's a discussion that we've had to have in our household too. Just, you know, when I ask my husband to do something for me, I don't expect that he drops what he was doing and does it immediately. And we can't expect that of our child either, especially as they get older and have things that they're in the middle of. So recognizing that and providing that warning. And when they say, can I have just a minute? Yep, as long as, again, you hold up your end of the bargain and it is just a minute. Giving a small number of directions at a time, rather than kind of this multi-step long list of directions, especially if your child has shown that they need fewer directions at a time in order to follow them. And it, again, increases the likelihood that they'll remember and do what it was that they were asked. And then finally, letting kids have a choice. So as kids grow up, it is important that they have a say in their own scheduling. It might be a structured choice. So things like, do you want to take a shower after dinner or before dinner? Because I have to be okay with both options and not just when do you want to shower? Because at my house, the answer would be I don't. So offering some structure around that choice. But when we give that choice, it does allow our young people to start to feel more empowered and more encouraged. And again, build that trust that, hey, my parent is trusting me and like respecting my opinion in this situation. The last thing I'm going to talk about, oh, I know I'm running short on time, is self-care. And I don't want to give this kind of shortchange it, but recognizing the importance of the need for self-care, because this sets you and your child up for success. We're all a little bit more reasonable when we've had time for ourselves to meet our own needs. And as caretakers, there are a lot of stresses piled on you, and some we put on ourselves. And so, and there are a lot of options. It's just, there are a lot of things in the air that it's just not an option for us to let those balls drop. You know, I have to go to work. I have to, my kid has to go to school. I have to put food on my table and take care of my child. Those aren't things I can just be like, not today. And so that can be really stressful. So taking a few minutes just to think about what you need to take care of yourself. And I'm not going to tell you that you need to figure out how to get to the gym 3 days a week, because I don't. And I'm not going to tell you to eat a diet of, you know, salads and lean protein, because I also don't. But where can you kind of build in those little pieces that help you feel better about yourself, or help you feel like you're in a better place, that you're just kind of debriefing a little bit. And one of those things I know for me is just chatting with a colleague or a friend and taking a couple minutes to just kind of not think and just talk about whatever. Going for a walk and talking with a friend, journaling before bed, laying in bed for 2 minutes before you get up and just visualizing your happy place. Even if you know you're going to get up and go to your unhappy place, that can make just a little bit of self-care for your day. Kids, it's also equally important to recognize where they need a little bit of fun and downtime too. They get overwhelmed or just in a rut. So getting out of that rut can be helpful to kids' peace of mind. Finding creative ways to change it up. With moody teenagers, they need a say in what that looks like. And so asking them what they want for a break might help you get a little further with your older kids. And finally, give yourself a break from the daily grind, but also from seeking perfection. There's a lot going on right now. So taking baby steps, making little changes, nothing's going to go perfectly all the time or right away. And you can't take on all the battles at once. And sometimes your stress is going to be at a level where you're like, I just can't even deal with trying to implement, you know, healthy eating for my kid right now. Like, I don't care if she never eats peas. I can't deal with it right now. And that's fine, because you know what? There are some big battles that are bigger than others that we need to fight in the moment. So give yourself a break. Find your, you know, we're all parents and we're all just trying to figure this all out as we go along. So find your rocks, lean on them. They're probably making it up as they go along too, but their perspective might be helpful and help you get new perspective on your situation. So with that, I'm going to ask Colleen if there were any questions that came in the chat, if anyone has anything that they do want to ask as a question. I appreciate your patience.
Thank you, Kim. There are no questions in the chat. Just there was a comment regarding the sleep. So based upon what Kim had shared at the end here, just taking those small steps. So even if it's just striving for one night that you get 8 hours of sleep, taking those small steps towards better self-care and putting these strategies into place that were shared this evening. So thank you so much. It was wonderful connecting with everyone.
Great, thank you. So we do have one other chat that was one other question that was in the chat. And so let me read that. How do you talk to a teacher about consistency helping your child? So how do you talk to a teacher about consistency with helping your child? Kim or Colleen?
Consistency with helping your child as far as academically supporting in the classroom, possibly thinking about when we're in these times, what are some of those strategies that are being shared within the classroom that can be shared at home, such as if we're implementing mindfulness, maybe that is something that whatever the teacher is doing in the classroom around that, it can be something that then is done at home. The idea of that two-way communication and making it where the students or the kids in this environment understand that what's going on in school is also reinforced at home, or in this case, at home and school is reinforced in the home environment. I know it's that boundary right now is a little bit mixed up when we think about the home environment being the school environment, but just kind of making that one and making the children understand the reinforcement that can be done with school and home and making more of a connection there. So having that conversation, and I know there's conferences coming up, so maybe that's an opportunity to kind of have those conversations about intentionality and what is happening. And Kim, sorry, I think you were.
Nope, that was all really helpful. I was gonna say too, I think being upfront and acknowledging that and letting a teacher know, maybe even phrasing it as like some things I have found that have been helpful, or I have noticed when this class routine changed that my child had a really hard time with that. Even if they'd be willing to let you know ahead of time, if they could send you an email or text or whatever the communication you're using through school is, so that you could prepare your child. If you kind of talk about it in terms of your child's needs and how that teacher could work with you to help you meet their needs, then that might be a way to approach it that doesn't put the teacher on the defense that says, you know, you're changing it and that's messing up my kid, which is what we want to say. So trying to kind of frame it, I think, in that regard about what your student needs, what you've noticed, and how can they help support you with that.
Thank you. And the family member also says thank you. Thank you for being so authentic, Colleen and Kim. Certainly appreciate it. At one moment, I thought you guys were talking about me or talking directly to me. And I thought maybe someone had bumped into me in the grocery store when I was on autopilot. So you never know, but that reset and refocus is certainly some good tips and some takeaways. And I think those are some great best practice that you talked about, just checking in routinely with your kid and getting in the habit of that. So again, a big thank you to Kim Morant and Colleen Way for sharing that timely information. So to our families, we want to say thank you and thank you for your patience. We went a little bit over time, just 5 minutes. We thank you for being so patient and joining us tonight. So our goal this week was to share information that is meaningful to our family. In our planning process, we used the feedback from previous Celebrating Abilities event and the last year's event to help us pick topic for this week's Celebrating Ability. It was very important to us to make this experience a good one for you. We can only do that with your feedback. Each night after each presentation, you will be asked to complete a survey that would tell us what your thoughts were about tonight's presentation and every night's presentation for that matter. And then later you will be asked to complete a surveys to tell us what your thoughts are about the overall Celebrating Abilities Week. By completing the survey and including your contact information, you will be given a chance to win a free Celebrating Ability t-shirt. Yep, free 99 Celebrating Abilities t-shirt. Now, it's the only kind in the world. You will be the first to have it. And we'll tell you more about that in a second. So you will find a link in the chat to the survey, and you must include your contact information. That can be an email or a phone number or both, so we can give you further instructions on how to claim your free t-shirt. As always, we encourage you to make sure that you are in communication with your child's teacher, the school support staff, as well as the administrators. If you have any questions or concern, we are all here to help and to support you. Please complete the survey using the link provided in the chat. And before we close, I just want to say thank you to our event sponsor and the wonderful planning committee. And thank you all for joining us. We hope to see you back here tomorrow at the same time and every night this week at 5:30 p.m. You should use the same link to access the presentation that you used tonight for each additional day that we have this week. And that's Thursday and Friday. So we have some wonderful topics that are coming up, filled with a bunch of great information and resources for you. Friday, again, will be our Celebrating Abilities Success Week. I might have said that backwards, but all the words were in that line. So we want to certainly invite you to join us to celebrate you. Be safe and be well. Have a great night.